and PC Fantasy Sunday Live. My name is Kyle Senra. I'm the Full Press Coverage Fantasy Managing Editor. I co-host the Full Press Coverage Fantasy Pod, and really looking forward to talking with you all. A few things on the docket includes first and foremost answering any and all questions. So at any point during the broadcast, feel free to comment, whether it's on YouTube or however you're listening or viewing this. You can also reach me on Twitter at Senris, the Full Press Coverage Fantasy Pod account as well, at FPC_fantasy. At any point, again, start questions, trade questions, whatever it is that you need, just let us know or let me know. I'll do my best to answer all your questions as best possibly. I know early in the season we have less info. Right? I feel like the sit-start decision making for myself, I know it gets better as the season goes. We'll talk about the process nonetheless. As on top of answering any questions, we're also going to talk about a DraftKings lineup. I'm gonna build a DraftKings lineup live, just in case anyone is new to daily fantasy sports. Just quickly introduce the format and give a couple of quick lineup strategy tips and plays for week 3 specifically. I think that a lot of times for daily fantasy, again, it's contests, so a lot of the main slates on DraftKings will be suddenly, and usually they exclude the Sunday night game for a lot of the main slates. It's usually just the afternoon games, which I guess without bye weeks that would be I guess that's 13 games. Now once bye weeks get in, it's a little so we'll talk that, and once the injury reports are out, also get into that and set those injury things straight, and who's out at least for the 1:00 games. And there's a couple players like DeAndre Swift, for instance. It's a big guy, questionable. So I've got some notes. Okay, well, if he's out, these are the people you put in. So get to talk about decision making and all that in a sec. So again, at any point, feel free to answer questions. But we're going to start right now with again building a DraftKings lineup. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly share my screen, and then we'll go through and I'll show kind of my process here. I'm not necessarily a big daily fantasy expert. I do play often enough, and I will say my bigger area of expertise so far this year, I get the NFL, but it's definitely the CFL on DraftKings. It's where I play more. I've had more success. I have had some success doing this. Now, I have a couple of really good to listen to and look to often. There's the Armchair Fantasy Show Friday nights, a DFS show, usually around Eastern time. That's if you could only listen to one DFS source for content, it's them. Gerson, Tim, and the host Jeff. They do such a tremendous job. A lot of experience in lineups, and I feel like whenever I've had success, it's usually been because I've gone on the show, asked questions, them help with lineup construction. So I hope to share what from them as best I can. So what we'll do is we'll share the screen now, and we'll talk DraftKings. So just allow for 1 second. All right, so this is the enter any contest, and I think contest selection is important. It's one of the most important parts of DFS. But very quick, you can kind of take a lot of contests into 2 different types. Cash games, or what they call about DraftKings is 50-50, which is a lot of times half the people playing in that test will win, but normally it's not a huge winning. It's usually double or triple whatever you've invested. Now, there's also GPPs or tournaments, and that's a lot of fields, and less people win, but those that win are more higher amounts. So whatever you're trying to want to slowly build a cash reservoir, those 50-50 games are good. Every week you play a few and slowly double up your money the more you win. The tournament GPPs are good for if you want to just win, swing for the fences, or say that expression, and give the biggest high upside opportunity to win the most amount of money with the least amount of chance. Knowing what you're going into, and I mean, you might play a mix of both, to be honest, but knowing what each contest is important. The contest I joined specifically is here, so it's the membership on this one's actually one of their big ones, and also understanding, can you enter multiple lineups in the same contest? If you want to enter one lineup, I would suggest staying away from the multi-entry. Where you want to go, like a lot of the multi-entry contests, you can submit up to 20 lineups. You have to pay for each one, but I find, give myself an advantage rather than pay one in 20 different contests. I'd rather pay all 20 into one contest. So just also being aware of that. So the one this would be one where I would. It's a GPP, so you're looking for high upside chances. And what you want to do is you want to tell a story with your lineup. This is how this lineup is going to work, and you're shooting for the 1% upside on all of these. So that's really the only chance of getting any type of money. And again, in the 50-50s, okay, safer high floor upsides, because all you want to do is be in the top. So I'm going to go with the GPP sort of tournament play where you're going for those high upside, and you're trying to build a story, like I said. So one of the things to look for is game stacks. So take players specifically, you want to stack your quarterback, thinking, okay, the quarterback's going to throw downs. You want to try and predict who those touchdowns are going to go to. If this game is going to be a high scoring game, you want to have that high upside and also have players in that game. So you're kind of doubling up the points. And so I think that's kind of the first thing is, how do you want the story to be told? And so what you do is you end up with a $50,000 budget, and you have to fill a lineup. So quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receiver, tight end, flex, and defense. And you need enough, you can't go over that $50,000 budget. And so player price is here. You've got different positions. So one of the first things that I like doing is actually looking at the real quick and just seeing, who's priced where. And what I try to do is I try to find someone who get the opportunity workload. It's a high enough scoring game, and the touchdown upside's there, but is priced for that opportunity. And looking on this list, so just as a reference, you've got Derrick Henry as I think the most expensive player on the slate at $8,000. Done pretty well against the Colts defense in the past, so he's probably working up. So that's like kind of like assuming Derry's the RB1, that's what you're kind of comparing for $8,600. What's enough of a discount, but still high enough ranking? So you want a player that probably has top 5 upside, but is priced significantly lower. Like, I mean, Kamara, for instance, probably has 5 upside, but he's only $400 cheaper than Henry. I don't know that Kamara is the guy I want, put the upside on. Like, even if you go right down to Chubb, you're talking about $1,000 difference between Henry and Chubb. That's where it's starting to get that. Jonathan Taylor, almost $2,000 difference between Derrick Henry, and that's the total opposite side. So Taylor would be a good leverage for those against Derrick Henry. But really, if you keep going down further, what I really like is for $2,400 cheaper than Derrick Henry is Chris Carson. And both running backs are similar, right? The lack of passing game involvement. But with Carson, yes, it's on the road, but Seahawks' game is actually the highest combined over-under of any game on the slate this week, and not just on the Sunday slate, but any game this week. 55.5 was the last time I checked this morning. So thinking that this game is going to be high scoring, I'd like to get some exposure into this lineup. Now, what Chris Carson does is that $6,400 is a really cheap way to get in, because we look at some of the other high price players, specifically on the Seahawks side. Russell Wilson is $7,600. You go to his receivers are actually almost as expensive, $7,400, $7,300. Again, for $1,000 less than Tyler Lockett, you can get Chris Carson, maybe get the workhorse back. Maybe want in this matchup. Dalvin Cook might not play. So you'd think between the two running backs, you'd want that situation with Christian. You could also attack the Vikings pass game as well. But again, Justin Jefferson, $7,200, basically as expensive as Lockett and Metcalf. Adam Thielen at $6,700. That's where it's kind of getting to a better range, where Thielen becomes kind of a play in consideration. But having looked through this, what are the things that I've really liked about this week in terms of great value that I almost want to lock in right away? Way down here, we're talking in the $3,000 range. KJ Osborne. This is especially true if Dalvin Cook doesn't play, but even if he's not 100%, they limit him in terms of his usage. I think that means more pass volume towards KJ Osborne. One thing about DraftKings nice, you can look at player game logs. So how has KJ Osborne done? Well, each of the last 2 weeks, last week against the Cardinals in a loss, actually both games were losses, 6 targets and then 9 targets. And I mean, that game script of them being probably going to be the case against the Seahawks. The Bengals and Cardinals, right? Like, I mean, the Cardinals are a really good offense, but I don't know that we'd expect that of the Bengals for the Bengals to have won that game, to be leading for much. So if they're trailing against those types of teams, I expect it'll be the same case against Seattle. Osborne has done the opportunity, 14.6 points without a touchdown, by the way. 7 catches, 76 yards in week 1, 5 for 91 and a touchdown in week 2, which obviously helps the ceiling. No Dalvin Cook means probably more passes. So KJ Osborne at a ridiculous price at $3,500. I think we're talking about, basically half of what Thielen is, and even less than half of what Justin Jefferson is. You can get the same price there, and the way Osborne's not quite as much upside as those two, but close enough to where the discrepancy in price tells me I want to go on. What I've done here is, without yet going with the quarterback, I've got a correlational stack between the seed. Okay, I want the running back in the team that I think is going to win, right? More rushing attempts, they'll be up, and the receiver for the team behind. So if Carson does well, if the Seahawks score a lot of points and Carson is doing in the right game script, it's also going to be the situation where Osborne's going to do well. So, if both things happen, then it's really good for both players, right? Maybe Carson does amazing and Osborne does nothing. That could be the chance, but the likely scenario where Osborne is getting a lot is probably the scenario where the Seahawks are up, and you really want that for Chris Carson. As opposed to if you went with the opposite and said the Seahawks are going to be down, okay, so then I want to attack the pass game options of the Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, or DK Metcalf stack. And then, or Dalvin Cook is healthier, maybe you go the opposite and say Dalvin Cook. But I think that's how I want to approach this. It gives good flexibility, and Chris Carson at his price is a good play regardless of the format. If you're doing GPP or the tournament, I think Chris Carson's almost a lock, and Osborne. So get both of those cheap players in, I think, is smart right off the bat. The second highest game on the slate is the Bucs Rams at 50.5. So, or 55 exactly. And so it's like just a half point less than the Seahawks Vikings. So we'd also like to get some exposure that. And so when you look at through here, so I guess if you want to attack that Rams-Bucs game, both quarterbacks are pretty viable. You've got Tom Brady at 6,800, Matt Stafford at 6,400. And again, compare them top end. If you assume Kyler Murray or Patrick Mahomes are the top quarterbacks this week, 8,200. So what gives a significant enough savings on those two to make it worth it? And I mean, Brady down at 6 actually does. Same with Stafford at 64. That's 1,900 less than Murray. So you could kind of go with either of those quarterbacks. I'm thinking I prefer, but I think you can make the lineup either way. Maybe we can try making the lineup either way. Now, what you want, again, for a quarterback like Brady, again, expecting this game to be a shootout, is you kind of watch both ends, thinking that both teams will score enough points. So who do you want to stack with Brady? You could really go, I'd say 3 main options. You've got the 2 wide receivers, Mike Evans at 6,300, Chris Godwin at 61. And I also say DFS on Yahoo. And I know on Yahoo they're at the same price. So a slight discount here for Godwin. And to be honest, Yahoo uses half-point PPR. DraftKings is full-point PPR. So if anything, this would be the format where Chris Godwin should be favored relative to both. Like if you're going to tell me they're even in one, and in the other format someone ahead, I would expect to be Godwin ahead in this format. Godwin has been incredibly efficient yards and catches and more consistent. Evans, it really is the touchdowns PPR format. So knowing it's full point PPR, I really like Chris Godwin's price this week at 6,100. Priced at this case before we knew Antonio Brown would miss the game. So if there was that knowledge that Brown wasn't traveling with the team and wouldn't play, I believe both would be priced higher. So I'd say take advantage of that and put Godwin in. Now for the other option actually for the Bucs is to go with the tight end, Rob Gronkowski. He's at 55. So only a $600 difference between Gronk and Godwin. If there was a bigger discount, if Godwin was more properly priced, more expensive, then Gronk would have a good saving. But here they're kind of close to the same pricing tier, and I think again Godwin has been so certainly better in cash games, but Godwin also couples that with a high ceiling. Like if he could catch touchdowns, he could get the big ability. Kind of is with Godwin more than or Gronk. So I like Godwin better than Gronkowski this week. Now for the Rams, I think you've got Cooper Kupp at 6,800. You also have Robert Woods, who's priced down at, and yeah, I think to me this has been one of the things you can also check is former week pricing, right? What was Cooper Kupp priced at? 5,500 and 6,000. Now he's up at 68, so a bit of a jump. But remember that 55 and 6,000. Robert, 2 disappointing performances, but 57. So Kupp has been more expensive on DraftKings each of the last 2 weeks, but $100 week 1, $300 difference in week 2. Suddenly Woods is staying at that 5,700, but now they keep rating Kupp up to where there's a $1,100 difference between the two. And to me, the game script kind of says that. Robert Woods got volume last week, 9 targets, but not the greatest yards performance. 64 yards, still pretty good. You just compare it to Cooper Kupp, let's say, talking 163 yards, right? And I believe he's the wide receiver 1 overall right now. So in that sense, Kupp is a value because I think I'd rather play Kupp than most of these other players ahead of him. I kind of like the appeal of the Seahawks guys and Jefferson. Calvin Ridley against Bradbury, not as crazy. Terry McLaurin against Tre'Davious. I think I'd prefer Kupp to them. DeAndre Hopkins dealing with injury. Tyreek Hill's good, but I almost think there's another Chiefs player I prefer to target. So in that sense, Kupp is a value, but even more so, I think Robert Woods this week is a value. And because I disappointing performance, I feel like less people will be on Kupp, and that's rostership and ownership is also a big thing if you're looking for those tournaments. And this contest being a tournament play, I feel like Kupp's going to be a lot more popular than Woods, even though there's the discrepancy in price. So take advantage of the lower price, but also of likely playing Cooper Kupp. So actually on Robert Woods here. So complete the Brady, Godwin, Woods stack to go along with the Carson, Osborne stack. Now, the third highest game this week is that Chiefs-Chargers game. So going over to tight end now. We were already there. So Gronk at 5,500 I like. And it is a jump to get to those 2 high guys, Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, but they are consistent. Or you could go lower down to TJ Hawkinson. I'll be honest, I think one of the things every week is kind of decide, compare Kelce to Hill, right? And in this week, Kelce's cheaper on DraftKings. It's not all. Sometimes it's either. And again, I always play on Yahoo as well. And some weeks Hill's higher, some weeks Kelce's higher. So when Kelce's lower than Hill on either site, that's kind of one of the first questions I ask myself. Do I want for the elite tight end this week, Kelce, or not? And this Chiefs-Chargers game, division opponents, this could turn into a real shootout where, Kelce as tight end 1 seems almost obvious. Like it's almost locked in. Waller could do really well too against the Dolphins. So we'll leave it for now. And I think what we'll see is let's fill in the rest of it knowing, okay, are we going to spend 8,000 on tight end, 7,000? Or are we going to go down to Hawkinson and spend 5? So I think one of the things away is defenses. One of the first things I like to do at defense is go to the very bottom. Okay, from the bottom, what first defense I'm willing to pay? Jacksonville against Arizona, Detroit against Baltimore, against those offenses, no thank you. For $100 more, Cincinnati against the Steelers. No Deontay Johnson, big 100%. I actually kind of like the Bengals on the road as a chance to get turnovers. So maybe, but just ahead of them, $100 more. You get the Jets against the Broncos. Broncos are incredible, but I also think the Jets' offense is so bad that the defense might suffer. So no. Chargers, Chiefs, no thank you. I don't want either defense really. Against the Colts. This is another really going for only 2,400. Carson Wentz dealing with ankle injuries. Quentin Nelson, their best offensive lineman, also dealing with an injury. So Titans' defense has not been great, but this could be a good week for them. What I'm going to do is actually going to start with those Bengals, knowing that they're at 2,100. Cheapest I'm willing to go at defense. And if at the end we have extra money in the lineup, like if you have $300 more, Going up to the Titans is good. If you look higher than the Titans, Falcons at Giants, I mean, theory has a propensity to turn it over, but I also don't trust the Falcons defense. Watched it at Buffalo. No thanks, Buffalo of an offense. The way the Raiders are playing, that's too good of an offense too for me to want to play the Dolphins. Colts at Titans, I don't really trust the Colts against Derrick Henry. Seahawks, Vikings, shootout, and then Vikings, Seahawks. I don't want either of them. Honestly, I think the Cardinals against the Jaguars at 3,000 is about as high as I'm. They have a good chance of being the number one overall defense. Not really crazy about paying more than 3,000. So we've got three levels of defense here. I'm going to start with the Bengals. If we have 300 lineup, we can go up to the Titans. If there's $900 extra in the lineup, can go all the way to the Cardinals. So we'll leave that for now, knowing we're also discussing tight end. So from there, really the question is, what are again the games to target in terms of the highest scoring game? We need a running back. We need a flex. So for running back, really looking at volume. So let's go back to this main running back. For Derrick Henry makes a lot of sense. Talked about the Chiefs game. In theory, that's the game script we like for Austin Eckler, him having to catch a lot of passes. So I think Eckler's a really good play too. I like Jonathan Taylor this week, but it is kind of, the more we hear about it, the more it's riskier. Saquon Barkley at 6,500 could pay both running backs, under 7,000 to get Barkley and Carson. Does put a end towards the lineup, so that's something where, lower than him can go down to, maybe Antonio Gibson 900 is pretty decent. Tyson Williams at 5,800 actually like that against the Lions. I think that's a good run-heavy game script for them. Even Chase Edmonds against the Jaguars, so many points. But Barkley, that'd be the last time he's this cheap too. If he has an incredible breakout performance against the Falcons, he's going to be priced up in the $8,000 range. So maybe it's take advantage of Barkley's price and go with Barkley here. So all right, so let's look at what the two options that leave us with. If we go Travis Kelce and get that Chargers-Chiefs game, leaves with 4,700 in the flex. So what type of players are available in that range? You've got Moss at running back, Logan Thomas, Damian Williams as the Chiefs running back. Tyler Boyd is actually really interesting here, just because without T. Higgins, you might see more volume for Tyler Boyd. So he makes a lot of sense to me at 4,700. If you want to go with another running back and 3 running back, I think at this point, though, the high upside to me is with Tyler Boyd. So if you go Kelce, I think Tyler Boyd makes a lot of sense, and you get this type of lineup here. So you've got Brady at quarterback, Saquon Barkley, Chris Carson at running back, at wide receiver, Chris Godwin, Rob Wood stacking that game, Tyler Boyd, which in a sense sacks with the defense. And normally you'd like to stack running back, but anyway, Tyler Boyd, and then KJ Osborne as that 4th wide receiver. Also have Travis Kelce, and then the Bengals defense, no money left over to move up at defense, so Bengals is good enough. Now, I think the other option at tight end was, again, go with Darren Waller. So 1,000 or not quite, $800 cheaper than Kelce. So what can you get in the $5,500 range? You've got Michael Pittman, Sammy Watkins, Melvin Gordon to get that 3rd running back in against the Jets might be good. Actually, you've got the other Bengals receiver here, Chase, Christian Kirk. Knowing that DeAndre Hopkins isn't 100%, it might mean more targets for Christian Kirk. So really, I think the question there is, what matchup do you want to stack or a piece of? Do you want the Chiefs matchup with Kelce, or do you want the Cardinals matchup getting a piece of Christian? Personally, I think I'd feel more secure Kelce getting that safety, just because I have that price on Tyler Boyd. So I think that would be an example of a lineup that I would play. So yeah, if you feel free to use this exact lineup if you want, but that's kind of how I would go about building a lineup. I make sure I've got the 3 hot games of the week of the slate represented. Seahawks Vikings game with both a running back and a wide receiver. I've got the Bucks Rams game with a quarterback and 2 wide receivers stacking there, and then Travis Kelce. Right, Kelce's someone that you can play it's really tough to stack him with Mahomes because it's so expensive. You kind of just play Kelsey alone, knowing he's going to get a ton of points. Anyway, so that's a DraftKings lineup there. It took about half the show. But yeah, so just get to, I guess, regular scheduled programming. And actually, since it's almost right to the injury, I'm just going to look up the voter wire for the inactive report. So let me look up real quick. And of course, again, feel free to send any questions, comments over. We'll talk fancy for sure. Any questions, feel free to ask. And yeah, so just waiting for that load up. Again, mentioning so some of my sit starts. So we just talk about Robert Woods. So one of the I hinted at actually in the full press coverage Sunday morning stream, the NFL stream. One of the biggest sit start decisions this week is Robert Woods and Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju in quite a few leagues, so just in almost every league, trying to decide for him is always a little tricky. Now, I think so. With Juju, one of the things I like about him is no Deontay Johnson means it's for those for Claypool, but like just the overall chance of scoring in that game, I think is a lot better for the Bucks. The Rams aren't going to be able to. I mean, Darrell Henderson's questionable too. Be able to run really successfully. A lot of volume for the receivers. I was kind of initially in Juju, but now I think I've kind of flipped towards I want Robert Woods. Maybe it's seeing the prices in DraftKings were a lot higher than Juju. Tell me I should play him. So yeah, I'm thinking of just the upside of the matchup going for Juju Smith-Schuster. But that's one example of something that across a couple lineups, I've got a few other lineup decisions, maybe some deeper leagues that we'll get to soon. We'll get to the inactive reports. So just talk about which players aren't going to be there, aren't active. For the Arizona Cardinals. Fantasy-wise, Andy Isabella is inactive, as is Eno Benjamin. Andy Isabella being inactive. So it looks like DeAndre Hopkins is playing. He's not on this inactive list, so he's playing. And also be confident that he can play, maybe if he's not playing 100% of the snaps, but the chance of re-injury, having to leave again, they feel like is probably minimized. Otherwise, they might have Isabella active, knowing how much they love to run 4 wide receiver sets. So Atlanta, Russell Gage is inactive. So Olamide Zaccheaus now, it kind of becomes the number 2 wide if you don't count Kyle Pitts, of course. Wayne Gallman's still inactive. I think they're really happy with Cordarrelle Patterson and Mike Davis. That duo is going to stay the same. It's tough to play Davis. I've got him in a couple spots. You might have picked up Patterson, maybe with the thought of playing him. I'm not sure, but he's I think he's viable. He's at least they're both playable. I think be tough to do Davis, but if you're desperate, you can play him. He's going to get the volume. He get 7 targets last week. Now I was excited earlier about Tyson Williams. But one thing here for the Ravens is left guard Ronnie Stanley, is inactive, so maybe that affects more Lamar Jackson, but just keep an eye out on that one. Let's see here. So for the Bills, Matt Breida is inactive. So like it's good for Zach Moss. It'll be those 2 main running backs are the main guys, Devin Singletary, and they've been productive recently. For the Bears, fantasy for Holstead, Rashad Perryman inactive. No big deal there. Justin Fields making his first start. For anyone who listened to the Full Press Fantasy Pod this week, one of our bigger disagreements was Justin Fields. I have him ranked at QB. I think right out of the gate he's going to do well. Rushing touchdown against the Browns. They've allowed a rushing touchdown each of the first. I think it's going to be 3 in a row, honestly. Fields kind of has that skill set. So going to not only find the end zone on the ground, but through the air. So I could see a big week for Justin Fields. Big week, big news here for the Bengals. T. Higgins inactive. I already kind of hinted at it. Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase more in DFS, and I mean, really, they're kind of every week starters anyway. Maybe you could Boyd, but I think for sure this week you want to play him. Burrow might be hurt. I think that you lose some upside on Burrow. So here's an option that I'm toying with playing anyway is Daniel Jones in a lot of leagues. I've got a league where it's Daniel Jones and Aaron Rodgers are my two options, and it's single quarterback one. And right now I've got Jones in the lineup. I'm a little worried about Rodgers, specifically the lack of Elgton Jenkins for this game anyway. And I think that the tough 49ers defense could really shut them down. So I trust Daniel Jones more against the Falcons than I do Rodgers against Packers. And I'm Rodgers against the 49ers. I'm a Packers fan here. Maybe I'm extra negative there, but like for instance, like the reason I'm talking about with the Bengals section here is I'd rather play Daniel Jones than Joe Burrow this week. So I don't know if that's also an option people have, but I would lean towards Jones personally. Now the Rodgers Burrow, that's where it gets tricky. Like I don't have like both of them in the same league, so I haven't actually had to make that competition. I believe I've got Rodgers ranked higher in my rank. The lack of T. Higgins hurts Burrow, so I think I would still go Rodgers, but I am worried about the lack of left tackle Elgton Jenkins. So moving on, Cleveland now. No real fantasy implications other than Odell Beckham Jr. is playing. I still think a guy like Anthony Schwartz might be a viable. Bears corners aren't nearly as good as they have the last couple years, so they're more vulnerable through the air. For the Detroit Lions, Jamie Collins, Trey Flowers, both inactive. So this, the fact that Ridley's out for the Ravens isn't hurt as much because the two best pass rushers arguably for the Lions aren't. So, I'm starting Tyson Williams with confidence. I know someone asked us a lineup question that maybe we get through here. The Full Press Fantasy pod Twitter account, someone came up with a question scenario. Maybe I'll show that at some point, but the idea was, one of the things they could do is the RB2 on this manager's team is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but they're considering, like, one of the things they had is Latavius Murray on the bench. I might actually going with Murray instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire as the RB2. This league, they also had T. Higgins out, so having to react to the lack of T. Higgins. A couple of the options are, and this is relevant to this one because we're talking about the Lions, but Nelor, Quintez Cephas, Henry Ruggs, Laviska Shenault, and was asked best replacement for T. Higgins as the flex play. And I mean, Latavius Murray is also an option, but then this is a lineup that lost Dalvin Cook midweek. So Christian McCaffrey, not Dalvin Cook, but the same kind of scenario. McCaffrey injured, so they've only with 4 points with McCaffrey, they kind of need more upside, I think, to come back. So a running back is not the answer. I think you need the high upside wide receiver touches. So knowing that, I actually Cephas and not hearing anything about DeAndre Swift being inactive. So DeAndre Swift's in, but I still think Cephas might be a good play here. As the number one wide receiver on the Lions. Aguilar might also be there on the Patriots. Sure, Chenault's gotten enough targets. He's also not 100% healthy. And then Ruggs has a really tough match. I kind of like Quintez Cephas over all of them, Aguilar, Shenault, and Ruggs. So going for that high ceiling chance on Cephas, I think is the play there. Anyway, this question is courtesy of Gilbert. So the Full Press Fantasy probably retweeted his lineup in his scenario, so you can check that out. Sure, but anyway, keep the question in. Speaking of which, got a question right on the stream. From Alton beat Meyer. Everyone's going to beat Urban Meyer this year, I think. Should I start Sermon or Sony Michel over Jace or Robert Woods, given the injuries to Elijah and Herndon? I would say definitely not Sony Michel, because, okay, let's say he gets 10, 15 carries with Bucks front seven. I think what you want there is the pass catching back, actually. And what it looked like once Henderson left was that the rookie Jake Funk. Luke Falk's I believe the rookie tight end. But anyway, Jake was actually playing on third downs. So against the Bucks, the pass catching back actually looks to be Funk, not Michelle. So I say definitely don't play Michelle. Trey Sermon, it's difficult, right? He got injured on it. In theory, it's high upside. It's the Packers defense, which hasn't been very good at all, especially to running back. So in theory, it's a good matchup, but you talk about injuries to Elijah Mitchell and Henry. I think the injury to T. Higgins probably just means more volume for Ja'Marr Chase. So if is these four players, Sermon, Michelle, Chase, and Woods, and I had to pick Ja'Marr Chase, I think he probably becomes the alpha for the Bengals right away here in this game. I think it's gonna bypass Boyd. I mean, I think we'll also do really well. But yeah, Ja'Marr Chase has got him, I think, as a top 20 receiver this week. And is this question, playing both Chase and Woods and then deciding to play one of them? You see, I think I'd still take Woods because I like the way that game script goes. Over Michelle. I think 100% of the time you want Woods instead of Michelle in this Rams offense. But even Sermon, I think I'd still go with both receivers here. Ja'Marr Chase, Robert Woods. I think you get high upside with both. Again, I talked about it. The Rams-Bucks game is the second highest total point over-under combined on the week. Those teams are going to be passing a ton. So, yeah, I think if the option here is to play both Ja'Marr Chase and Robert Woods, I would do that and leave Sermon and Michelle. Anyway, so I'll keep going with now to the Colts. Marlon Mack is actually inactive. My Yahoo DFS article this week, going for two, I talked about Jonathan Taylor as a good value option, specifically in Yahoo, less so in DraftKings. Still decent enough price, just PPR, which I like for him even more. So yeah, I love Jonathan Taylor this week. He might be the only Colts player worth playing. Defense. I'm playing Nyheim Hines in a couple spots, but Marlon Mack means just more work for Taylor. I mean, the fact that Marlon Mack's not there might mean it better off for Hines. But yeah, I'm not seeing anything about Quentin Nelson. So it looks like those two are going to play again, not 100%, but at least they're in that. Quentin Nelson, especially helps Jonathan Taylor. So the Taylor might be a viable DraftKings play. I still think that the better options in that full PPR format, especially Barkley, but especially on Yahoo, the half-point PPR, I love Jonathan Taylor in that price range. For the Jags, it's mostly just corners. Trey Henderson. So I think with DeAndre Hopkins questionable, and with these Jags corners out, CJ Henderson, I think Rondale Moore and Christian Kirk are both really good starts. I think I'm starting Christian Kirk everywhere. I think 4 or 5 teams. So it looks like only is the best Meyer. Thank you for again chiming in on his question, which again, I think does want to not even ask their own, but chime in on this as well. If you should play Sermon or Michelle over Woods. I know I said no with both receivers, but anyone else want to chime in, feel free. But yeah, I really like Christian and Rondale Moore, but yeah, both seem to be good. For the Chiefs game, in any fantasy relevant inactives, for the Doris Fountain, I know I'm Canadian, so I really like this player anyway, but he's a good guy no matter what. Offensive guard, and he's one of their starting offensive linemen. Probably, I think if it hurts anyone, it probably hurts Clyde. I think Kelsey and Hill are going to do just fine. You want to play McCole Hardman? Maybe. I don't know that I will. Frank Clark's inactive, so to me that's helping Austin Eckler. And I talked about him, setting DraftKings lineups with Eckler as the RB1 makes a lot of sense as a pivot away. I think I'm going to have Derrick Henry as the RB1, but I think Eckler especially makes no Frank Clark would probably help Eckler, but I think the offense in general. For the Chargers, Joshua Kelly's inactive. So for Joshua Kelly, I don't think he's been active at all this year. He really is the fourth running back. Like, he's asked by the rookie Larry Roundtree and Justin Jackson. Neither threaten Eckler, I don't think. For the Patriots, maybe a little surprising, Ramondre Stevenson inactive. I think that makes Damian Harris a good in that he won't lose any of the goal line touches. Stevenson might lose him to Brandon Bolden, who knows? But for now, it looks like you want there are Damian Harris, James, maybe the two Patriots players you want anyway. Now, the thing that hurts the Patriots though is because offensive lineman Trent Brown is inactive, so that'll hurt Harris, but worth playing. That'll be dependent if anyone has any Harris questions sitting starting him. Let me know. I have him in. It's super deep. I think we start 12 players. Yeah, we start 12 and minimum 3. So that's one where, unfortunately, that league he's kind of my RB1. Maybe Michael Carter emerges as the year team that was hurt by Cam Akers' injury. I'll be frank there. I was definitely planning for Akers to be that guy. And so Now for the Saints, no Desmond Trufant, and so maybe you can attack it a bit more. So suddenly Nelson Aguilar becomes a play. I remember Gilbert's of who was he going to play to replace the injured T. Higgins, and I said Quintez Cephas. But Nelson Aguilar, for the sense I know Marshawn Lattimore is also not on bench. I think I'd still go Cephas there, but it makes it a little more, an extra notch towards Nelson Aguilar. Giants. This one's interesting. Devontae Booker is inactive, so won't be the backup running back this week. Maybe this sets up for where Saquon Barkley plays 90+%, and that I think that'd be a good development for Saquon Barkley for fantasy for sure. Pittsburgh Steelers, big one is Deontay Johnson inactive. It's funny, them and the Bengals, the receivers, and playing each other, there'll be a duo of main receivers for the Steelers, Claypool and Juju. And the last one is why I was, again, one of my lineup decisions, considering Juju over Woods. But even if Juju is one of the top two, I mean, that's kind of what Robert Woods has been too. And I think there's upside on the score in terms of points scored. I think is in that Rams Bucks game. So that's Robert Woods over Juju. Trying to think of any other Juju decisions I have. I know for anyone who listen to the full press fantasy pod, 11 redraft leagues, I ended up with 5 shares, so almost 50%, more than any other player in redraft. Juju Smith-Schuster, and I think outside that one league where I'm going to bench him for Robert Wood, and I mean, also benching him for guys like Mike Evans and Amari Cooper. That's a team pretty stacked at receiver. It's nice to get Juju as the fourth guy. I think there's another league where, it's Juju, Woods, Chris Godwin. I might have played Robbie Anderson already, so that's kind of why I'm aside between Juju and Roberts. Probably shouldn't have played Robbie Anderson on Thursday. So kind of suffering that. But so that's of where I'm kind of thinking about Juju Smith-Schuster. I have him as a top 24 wide receiver. Hasn't produced as that yet this year. So one thing for the Steelers, they're without TJ Watt again this week. So the defense a little hurt, so it helps the Bengals offense, I think. For the Titans, no Joshua Anthony Ferkser. So no, lack of time for Ferkser. I mean, McCruitt or I guess it's Jeff Swaim. Those are your two tight ends. I think if there's any passing volume for them, I think a lot of it's just going to run through Derrick Henry. I saw 6 targets last week. Like, Henry might be emerging as the number 3 target for the Titans behind AJ Brown and Julio Jones. And if he does, this could be a season where he is the running back 1 overall. So and then finally Washington, no real fantasy relevant inactives here. Curtis Samuel on IR. So it's all going to be McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and Diane Brown pass catchers, and J.D. McKissick, I guess, or Gibson led the team in targets week 1. I think McKissick led the team in targets week 2. So they like to pass the running back. Figuring out which one is tricky against the Bills. I think Antonio Gibson play anyway, but I also think McKissick has some value this week. So quickly check. So once again, any questions questions, again, you can let me know on Twitter at FBC_fantasypod. Also, you can look at my personal account on Twitter at Senra Says. So yeah, I think let's see, gone through the injury reports with everyone. The big ones to take away: no T. Higgins, no Deontay Johnson. I know for later, like some of the Bengals include Dalvin Cook, Josh Jacobs, but from what you can see, Swift is playing. He's active. DeAndre Hopkins is playing. He's active. I guess we're the two big players with questionable tags. Actually, in one of our group chats, Losty Mix, who co-hosts the Speak On It pod, he's asking, got two players here to start. James Robinson against the Cardinals, Mike Davis against the Lions, Leonard Fournette against the Rams, Devin Singletary against Washington. So looking at those four names, he says he needs to start two. Sorry. Suspense on the answer. So again, Mike Davis, Leonard Fournette, James Robinson, Devin Singletary. I think Singletary is the obvious play. Definitely Singletary in the lineup. And then between Mike Davis, Leonard Fournette, James Robinson. That's the thing I do whenever I have multiple players to consider. Okay, I've got multiple starts and I got multiple options. The first thing I look for is who's the obvious best option or who's the obvious option. And that way I have an decision either saying I'm for sure benching this player or I'm for sure starting them. And to me here, the way Singletary, his usage, I would say he's the obvious. So Devin Singletary for me for sure over Robinson, Davis, and Fournette. So then it's trying to figure out between those three. Mike Davis, Leonard Fournette, James Robinson. If Robinson really has been used in the passing ball, and against the Cardinals, you really want that running back. Let me just take a look and see what his usage has been relative to everyone else. It just, it strikes me as we might want to play Marvin Jones for sure this week, I think. Our full press coverage Dynasty League, which my co-host Brad and I are both in. I've got Marvin Jones starting in that league. So Robinson has 9 targets compared to only 4 for Carlos Hyde. So far, okay, if there's a pass catching back, it is James Robinson. I think that would be enough to lead me toward him. Just because for if it's a tight game script, and let's say the Bucs are behind, especially, I think that's actually more of a Gio Bernard type script. Now, Fournette does have 11 targets this year, so more James Robinson, and then I guess Mike Davis does too. So all three are kind of involved in the passing game. 13 targets. Actually, Mike Davis is technically the most involved in the passing game. It really comes down to the early down involvement. 16 attempts in 2 games for Robinson, 20 attempts in 2 games for Fournette, 24 for Davis. So if we're following the workload and the volume, we would say Mike Davis. In terms of Rams, Cardinals, Giants games, I think like the Falcons Giants game is the lowest over here. So you'd almost want to target. I'm thinking James Robinson, honestly. I think because, again, so he's the pass catching back. I don't know how valuable that is for the Jags, but valuable enough, I think, in this game script against the Cardinals where they're going to have to throw a ton. So I'm saying Singletary and Robinson, personally. And then Beck Davis and Leonard Fournette. Again, I think the obvious call there is starting Devin Singletary. So now a couple quick for myself, tough decisions. So this one's a 14-team league. Final flex spot. We've got Ant Schwartz, Nelson Aguilar, KJ Osborne. Kind of like good environments to pass for all of them. Who knows what shape Odell Beckham's going to be in. So Schwartz could see enough volume. I think that's who I have in the lineup. Aguilar with no Desmond Trufant, but Lattimore is still there, so I have Aguilar. And then Osborne. Unfortunately, this is one where I would love to have the Browns game be at 4. And that way I could say, okay, is Dalvin Cook playing or not? And then I might lean Osborne. I think I'm going to stick with Anthony Schwartz for now, but that's a tricky one. Another Browns decision. It's again, I think I referenced it earlier. This is the league where I'm starting Damian Harris, 10 team, 12 start 12. Final flex spot. I guess I have to start two of these guys: Naeem Hines, David Njoku, Kenyon Drake. Part of me just going with the two running backs and starting 5 running backs this week. But again, not knowing if Jacobs is in, I probably might actually lean David Njoku. No tight end premium, so stick with both running backs. But that one's tricky. I know if Dalvin Cook is out, I guess there's one league where I am playing. KJ Osborne is kind of the backup to Dalvin Cook. I don't really have anyone else in that 4:00 slate on my bench. So on the waiver wire, I could pick up Hunter Renfrow, but I think I like the ceiling of Osborne if Dalvin Cook's out. So here's maybe my most interesting decision this week. So it's a hyper flex type league. So flex. I can't remember what you call, but it's start one at each position and 5 flex spots. So one wide receiver, 1 QB, 1 tight end. There's a super flex and 4 other spots. So for 5 total. It start 10. So six flex spots, 5 normal flex, 1 super flex. So really position scarcity doesn't matter. Just basically set up who scores more points. Cole Beasley, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or Sammy Watkins. I'm thinking no to Sam's really is between Cole Beasley and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But that's, again, my mind frame of where I'm thinking. I know I've got Beasley in the lineup. I also have Josh Allen as my quarterback there, so maybe it's getting the I'm a little concerned with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. No Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. I know there was talk of Joey Bosa being questionable. He is not on the inactive list. So Joey Bosa is playing. So I think in that instance, I'm going to stick with Cole Beasley over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So a couple of decisions I'm making: Cole Beasley over Robert Woods over Juju Smith-Schuster, Anthony Schwartz over KJ Osborne. Let's see, what else do I have here? Because those are probably my biggest ones. A lot of my decisions are like, if Josh Jacobs is out, I've got to play Bryan Edwards in the league. If Swift was out, I kind of set myself, okay, if Swift's out, play him here. Kind of mapped it out yesterday, knowing that, okay, with Swift, it's going to be a big one. But yeah, not seeing it's just the inactive list, not the official active list. I think maybe the NFL's kind of gotten away with that. If you're not on the list, it's because you're active. But yeah, seeing any news of Swift missing, I'm operating as though he's playing. Obviously, I'll check my lineups after this. I'll sign off at 12:30 and give everyone a half hour to kind of go through their lineups and use this ice. Yeah, I don't know. I'm okay. Yeah, DeAndre Swift is in some official news on that. So yeah, Swift. I'm gonna play Swift every league. He's maybe the number 2 target on that team. I believe he'll be number 2 in targets and receptions behind only TJ Hawkinson. I believe he is right now, so he kind of has to maintain what he's done so far. And he's got some decent touchdown upside when he's out there. If the Rams can score enough points against the Ravens, it might be a tough run play, but I think what you want from him is to catch as many receiving touchdowns as possible. He's probably going to get his big numbers. Now, he was pretty efficient touchdown last year on not a lot of carries, so there's hope that, I mean, that's a pretty good offensive line. Like the line. One thing I'll maybe get into more in future weeks is the offensive line stats, specifically the Football Outsiders metric. They have the Lions as the offensive line right now in the NFL. 4.46 adjusted line yards. We talked about the revamped Cardinals line. They're just a few yards just behind them. The number 1 line in the league is actually the Buccaneers. Browns at 2, and the Rams are at 3. I don't think we're really surprised with any of them. Cowboys 4. Jaguars as the 5th highest run unit, the offensive line. So that decision of James Robinson, I guess actually we talk about Fournette's in there too with the Bucs at number 1, but if James Robinson is going to get most of the work behind the number ranked offensive line in the NFL, and yeah, maybe the opponents they played, the Texans, Who'd they have last week? I can't remember who they played last week, actually. Anyway, maybe not the greatest opponents, certainly with the Texans. So maybe that adjusted line yards metrics can go down. But right now, they're a top 5 offensive line. I think I want James Robinson more than most weeks. So yeah, I'd go with James. A few, I guess, little quick things. I made a couple of trades. Never mind, I won't even talk about my trades. The question came in. We'll prioritize that. So full point PPR. So final flex spot. Amon-Ra St. Brown or Nyheim Hines? Tricky. I mean, with Carson Wentz injured, and I mean playing, but playing hurt, maybe that jump offs, more pass catch, more receptions for Hines. I guess the thing is with Amon-Ra is that he's kind of, if you said Quintez Cephas, I think I'd go with Cephas, but I think he's not quite established yet. He's still right, so I think he needs to come on a little bit. So far, both games, I mean, 2 catches, 23 yards against the 49ers, 3 catches, 18 yards against the Packers. That's giving you great production. Maybe this is his breakout week. But I lean, again, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, TJ Hawkinson, and Quintez Cephas as being the kind of majors there. So I think I'd keep Amon-Ra on the bench, and I'm going to play Nyheim Hines. I tend to kind of be a running back myself, but just so you know, this is Carlos 23 asking this. I'm playing Hines, so like I'm right there with you in terms of starting Hines. Like I'm playing it too. Like I'm not just recommending it. Definitely got him going in the lineup. So if he fails, I'll feel your pain on that one. I've got him in 2 or 3 spots, and I would, I don't think I have any Amon-Ra St. Brown in any of my teams, but if that was a decision I'd take, I would choose Hines over Amon-Ra St. Brown personally. So my answer is Hines there. But yeah, anyway, so quick trade that I made. This was so. I also write and do stuff for Going for Two. For Two stream, I joined the Dynasty Gambit pregame Thursday. Was talking about Davis Mills, and I was trying to send out trade offers to try and ship away Davis Mills, and I couldn't get a second for him. But the person who has Kellen Mond, I actually prefer Davis Mills, and so did this person because they actually drafted Kellen Mond before Mills in the rookie draft this year. I think I like his mobility, his ability to maybe, if Mond ever starts to gain rushing yards. I know it might be a few years away behind Cousins. I like his profile and his situation. Mills, part of the Texans team who, frankly, if they play bad enough, might be looking for a new quarterback to replace Mills next. So I want to kind of get out, and maybe this was almost a little surprising. I didn't think they'd go for this. This other manager, again, drafted Kellen Mond ahead of Davis Mills. So maybe made that decision that they preferred Mond to Mills, but I sent it out anyway in a third for Mills and a fourth. So I couldn't quite get a second for Mills, but I get a quarterback I prefer plus a third on top of that, and I drafted Mills with the third. So really, to me, the third is worth it, and to get Kellen Mond, and all I do is give up a fourth. So that's kind of like little more for backup quarterbacks. So this is super flex. I should probably mention that in a single quarter league, I don't think we'd be rostering Mills or Mond, certainly not trading for them and giving up picks for them. But in a super flex league, so I could get for Davis Mills. I know some people may sell for a second. I don't know if I ever saw anyone being able to get a second. So kudos to you. But in the leagues I've been, I haven't seen Mills move for a second. So that was just kind of a trade I made recently this week. A few trades. Another trade I made, I gave up Joe Burrow and I got, again, super flex, 2 firsts and a second. 3 picks. It was a rebuild anyway, so I decided I'll ship off Burrow and kind of hope to rebuild through picks, the liquidity of them. Maybe I sold a little low on Burrow, but we'll see. So those are a couple of trades that I've made. Always be trading, right? Redraft or Dynasty. Talked a lot about DeAndre Swift. Into the most recent Full Press Fantasy Pod again, the week 3 rankings debate. Brad and I went through a trade he and I made in a redraft league involving a couple players we talked about today, including DeAndre Swift and James Robinson. I got Swifty, and when I gave up, and if want to find out when I gave up, I'd again suggest going to the most recent Full Press Fantasy Pod episode. I believe we talked about it near the start of the episode, and getting to the last minute of this episode. So I want to thank everyone who watched. Only Olin is the best. Carlos 23, thank you for your questions. Hopefully, they both being appreciative of this, and I appreciate you guys just as much. So thanks for that. Thanks for the interactions. Anyone who's watched, listened, you can always contact me during the week as well. Twitter at Senra Says. Also the Full Press Fantasy Pod on Twitter at FPC_Fantasy Pod. In season, we'll do an episode every week, kind of just talking about rankings. Brad Harvin, my co-host, he puts his rankings on Full Press Coverage every week. Top 40 running back, wide receiver, top 25 quarterback, tight end. So check out at the rundown_BH and rankings battles. There's poll on Twitter. I guess about a half hour before the game kicks off. I can talk about Austin Hooper. I have Hooper as my tight end 10. He has him all the way down at tight end 23. One of the biggest disparities we have, and every week we're going to do that and poll and see what you all think. So I encourage you to go vote for that. If you believe in Hooper, vote on my side. If you don't, on Brad's side. And this will be something we do every week. I'll be here again doing the injury report, giving the active list, maybe setting a draft every week, and of course answering your sit-start questions. So I appreciate that. Once again, my name is Kyle Senra, and it's FPC Fantasy Live for Sunday, September 26th. Bye, everyone. Hope you enjoy your day of football.